The Fujinon 55mm f1.8 was made in Japan and released on the market in 1970. This was the standard kit lens that came with the Fujica ST701. There are 4 versions of this lens. The first version can be recognized by its all-metal black body, with the exception of the aperture ring, which has a silver finish. In 1972, Fuji released a new model in their SLR line, the Fujica ST801. This was the same year in which the company introduced the second version of this lens. This variant has an all-metal black body, apart from the segmented rubber focusing ring. But the most significant improvement that came along with this release was the multi-coating technology that Fuji developed in the early 70s, titled Electron Beam Coating, or EBC for short. You can see the acronym in green letters on the front of the lens. This new innovation allowed Fuji to add up to 11 separate coatings to the glass elements of their lenses. In 1974, Fuji released another update in their SLR system, the Fujica ST901. This camera was accompanied by a new revision of their 55mm f1.8 lens. This version is very similar to the previous one, but the only notable change that Fuji made was to replace the segmented rubber focusing ring with one that is completely uniform. And the fourth version, which is also the version we're discussing today, was released in 1976 together with the Fujica ST705. This variant is basically the same as the third version, but the only difference is that the EBC acronym is missing from the front of the lens. In the mid-1970s, Fuji began producing some lenses without the EBC coatings, which allowed for more cost-effective manufacturing. These non-EBC lenses were only offered as a package deal with Fuji's less advanced SLRs, and were never sold on their own. All 4 versions of this 55mm f1.8 Fujinon have the same optical design, with the main difference being their lens coatings. Back in 1976, the EBC-coated version of this Fujinon lens sold for $120. I found my copy on eBay for $46.89. Unfortunately, the diaphragm of my lens was stuck wide open due to oily aperture blades. I had to disassemble the lens, clean the aperture blades, and put the aperture back together. After all that was done, I checked to make sure that everything was working properly and my lens was ready to go back on my Fujica. The optical design of this Fujinon consists of 6 elements in 4 groups. This lens accepts filters with 49mm diameter. Aperture ranges from f1.8 to f16 with clicks for full stops only. The diaphragm is made of 6 rounded aperture blades. Focus throw is approximately 200 degrees. On the back, this lens has M42 mount. I use M42 to Sony E helicoid adapter, which allows me to focus closer when the adapter is extended, and if I need to reach infinity, I simply rotate it back to its normal position. This lens weighs 206 grams. Minimum focusing distance from your subject to your film plane or sensor is 45 centimeters, but when used with a fully extended helicoid adapter, that distance shrinks down to only 23 centimeters. The Fujinon 55mm f1.8 is a fantastic lens that combines unique vintage look with first-rate optics and durable build quality. This lens is surprisingly sharp at f1.8. I was actually astonished from the excellent resolution I was getting in the central area of the frame, even when I was shooting it wide open. By f4, the sharpness of this Fujinon improves significantly across the frame, and by f5.6, this lens rewards you with fantastic edge-to-edge sharpness and superb resolving power. Between f5.6 and f11, this lens delivers terrific results, capturing every critical detail in your images. I was amazed that a simple kit lens from the mid-70s can produce such fantastic photographs. Bokeh is another strong aspect of this humble Fujinon. The out-of-focus areas produced by this lens have wonderful softness with smooth and creamy look that I personally love. Specular highlights are round in the central part of the frame and become more cat-eye shaped towards the edges. The colors from this lens are very pleasing and have a natural look to them. Contrast is also excellent, even though it gets slightly reduced when the lens is shot towards bright sources of light. Since I have the cheaper non-EBC version, my copy does tend to flare some when pointed towards the sun, but I personally love lens flare and this doesn't bother me at all. But if that's an issue for you, try to get one of the EBC-coated Fujinons, which will provide you with much better flare control. The build quality of this lens is on a very high level. The all-metal body has a sturdy and durable feel, and the focus ring is smooth and precise, making the focusing process an absolute joy. There is some vignetting when the lens is shot wide open, but that is completely gone by f5.6. Distortion is not much of a concern with this Fujinon. There is some negligible barrel distortion, but it's barely noticeable. This of course makes it a good choice for architectural shots where straight lines are critical. When it comes to chromatic aberrations, this lens once again does not disappoint. There is some minor magenta and green fringing, but it's very insignificant, and if it bothers you, you can easily remove it in post. Stopping the lens down a few stops greatly reduces chromatic aberrations, making them a non-issue for most practical uses. Another plus for this lens is its super compact and lightweight design. Coming in at just over 200 grams, this lens is great for hiking or traveling since it will never add much weight to your kit. Its dimensions make it easy to carry and balance on both vintage SLRs or modern mirrorless cameras. So if you're looking for an excellent and affordable vintage lens at this focal length, I can highly recommend this Fujinon. It is sharp, small, and well built. It produces beautiful bokeh and doesn't have any major issues. It's also easy to find on the used market for a fraction of the cost of modern equivalents. The only thing I would caution against is to watch out for those oily aperture blades that I mentioned in chapter 1. But besides that, this lens is a real gem. And for those of you who are wondering how this lens performs for video, here are a couple of short clips that I shot with the Fujinon 55mm f1.8. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time here at Vintage Optics.